Morning, everyone. Erin Zen Warrior here. And yes, I'm in my towel again. Every now and again, I hear something when I'm in the shower, because I like to listen to shit when I'm in the shower. And this morning, it was a friend of mine. Hi, Rel. I hope she doesn't mind me doing this. And I hope she doesn't mind me also drawing a little bit of a comparison between her and me and the way that we're actually structured on a human design level. But she was talking about and she was talking about New Zealand women in particular, and I guess that's also from that perspective of women relating to women, and you're expecting a different relationship when it's your own, like, gender. And I would actually say that even within the appearance of new genders, to some extent, we kind of expect that. Like, if you're identifying as a woman, we still kind of expect you to be one, like, be with us. And this creates a really interesting reality. And she talked about how women don't necessarily hold their individuality and stay in their own independence, and they get inside a group of people. And as a result of getting inside a group of other women, they sort of down-regulate, and they kind of hold to the group's core belief. And that group core belief is probably going to be set by the leader, right? The leader of the clique. And I thought this was a really perfect example. What she was talking about, without talking about it from a human design perspective, was she was talking about what happens to all of us when we get inside the tribe and when we decide to pick a tribe. And we're in a time now where the quality of the tribe is disappearing. And I have another friend, Matt Castle, who talks a lot about the breakdown of the family. And I'm like, yes, because we're going from tribal socialist times to more individual times. We're going from the family unit to the individual. And so you're going to start to hear people like Arel and like Matt, though Arel is talking about it from the other side. She's like, and I'm trying to remember exactly what she said, but she's like, when are you going to basically hold your individuality and call people out? And of course, there's a lot more of that going on now. But when are you going to be strong enough to be in yourself? And she sort of talks about, the problem seems to be that the tribe doesn't really support the individual as an individual. And this, of course, is the last 400 years. It's about to change over. In 2027, on February 15th, this background frequency that we were all born in, that my bloody cat was born in, which is part of the reason he's my cat, not wild, because there's going to be a shift in even how animals behave with us. This whole thing is going to change. And we can see it changing because transits don't all of a sudden happen. But the background frequency that supports this tribal thing where we all go in and we support the power of the mechanism, it is going to change in the way that it is held. That doesn't mean that it will completely disappear, because we're still alive and we were born under the cross of planning. And under the cross of planning, we have been all about tribe. We have all been all about the family. We have been all about the socialism. We have all been about, on an unconscious level, the intention of the mechanism. And that mechanism is whatever the tribe is at the time. Now, as we've moved more into our individual selves, as things like COVID has locked us into our rooms and into our houses, and we've gone more inside, as meditation has come more into the forefront, as women have gone out into the workforce, as pressure has gone on the individual, we are seeing a movement towards individuality. And we all think that that's just because, things have changed in society. And that is true. But actually, human design suggests that's because there is a background frequency coming in of individualism. And so, yes, there are mechanisms within the world, as Matt may claim, there are mechanisms within the world that are definitely contriving women in the workforce, for example. That was apparently, connected to some organizations that were very pro that so that they could tax everyone. Right? Taxing one person in a household when you can tax two, why would you do that? Right? So, and that was something that was able to happen also under a socialistic cross, was like, well, we can take more money from more of the tribe, But ultimately, what happens in any group, and this will happen to us for time immemorial because the way we connect with each other is unconscious. What that means is I get near you and you get near me. And if we find a disruption or an alliance within our field, it's unconsciously happening like that. And as that happens, it changes the chart that we're running, because now we're conditioning into each other. Now, just as two people, you get an electromagnetic connection chart. When it's three people, you get what we call a penta. and pentas are made in 3s and 5s. And then when you get something like 2 pentas coming together, you know, a group of 6 or a group of 10, you start to build what we call a wā. And a wā is 9 people. An OC16 is 3 groups of 5 and a leader, right? A wā is 9 people and ideally a leader. And this is where projectors are going to come in. Ideally, you get a projector that's very independent, someone like myself or a few other projectors. There's a lot of other projectors out there that are going to be able, that really don't hang out in the group much. We hang out on our own. We come in, we go, that's a bit fucked, and we step back again. It allows us to not be conditioned by the wā. But to get shit done, the power of the wā is still super cool. Look at boards of directors, look at companies, look at families, look at institutions of religion that have stuck together and really kept it in the family. A friend of mine who's gay said, yeah, look at the pink dollar, right? Like they hold together, and it creates support, and it creates an intention of promoting themselves, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not picking holes in it. I'm just pointing out that that's what we do when we get into groups. But also what we do when we get into groups is we down-regulate our circuitry for hotspots, and we become nodal within the system. And what that essentially means is we start taking on archetypes. We take on the archetype of the leader. We take on the archetype of the warrior. We take on the archetype of the strategist and the innovator and the storyteller and and depending on the circuitry you have, depends on where you might fit within a tribe. And then depending on who disrupts you or who aligns with you, depends on who you're going to sidle up to within that tribe. And I've seen situations, a friend of mine was telling me about this, a client actually. Now, he runs teams that help build sets for what's it called? World of Wearable Arts and stuff like that. And he was saying that he had one person within the team who was kind of shit at her job and pretty disruptive. And she would go around and she would talk. And of course, someone like this is actually trying to break apart the wā. It can be good and it can be bad, right? Because the wā needs to learn to uphold the individual. And that's what Arel was talking about today. She was like, how do we, it seems that the individual is not supported. It's like, well, the individual actually has to learn to support itself. And in order to do that, we have to give up the safety of the wā in order to step back into ourselves long enough to feel what we feel about a situation before we step forward back into the wā again. And this is where I think groups need to go post-2027. Because the background frequency is not going to support corrupt socialism, you're going to have to be enlightened socialists. And what I mean by that is, you are going to have to support the individual first. And so instead of employing people, you see co-collaboration. Instead of large organizations and companies, you see small bespoke cottage industries that support each other. And yes, they support an idea, but they also don't enslave each other. They support each other holistically throughout their entire lives. And what does this do? Well, it creates healthier people. It also supports people having an independent idea. So all of a sudden, when you say, that doesn't align with me, it's no longer pushback, this phrase that's been created to keep people in alignment and to warn them that they are stepping out of alignment with the wā and need to get in alignment before they lose their job and lose their ability to support themselves. No, you won't do that. You'll be like, oh, okay, so you don't want to work on this project. Cool. Well, we just won't contract you to this particular job. And so you also see the movement, even in government here, and I know that they're cheating their way around different budgets and things like that to look good to the society. But isn't it interesting that also within government, over the last however many years, there's been a real tendency to employ a lot of people under contract in order to shift the budget, sure. But it has allowed people this ability to come in for 6 months at a time, a year at a time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for some people, I would insist that they contract. If you're a pure individual, especially if you're like a 3-5, but if you're a pure individual, you should be contracting. You shouldn't be employed. You're not employable, to be honest, And what I mean by pure individual is if your circuitry is purely individual, like some of my clients, and as soon as they get someone trying to control them or someone doing shit they don't like within the wā, it really fucks with them. So what I'm saying here is not that Matt is wrong or Arel is wrong, but because they're not, they're absolutely right. What they are observing within our society is how the tribe should work, right? Which is when everybody comes together as a group, we down-regulate our individuality for a bigger aura, the group aura, and we drive forward with that group in mind. And if we stay there and we don't hold meditation and we don't step out enough to check in with our individual selves, what we do is we take on these roles within the group and we don't question them, and we can become very dogmatic, and we can become bitchy, and we can become cliquey, and we can become all of that. And if you look at socialism, it's cliquey as fuck. Just watch America, any of the parties, any of the political parties in this country. Look at some of the different cities where they're more socialist. I'm in Auckland. It's more entrepreneurial. It's more individual. If you go down to Wellington, it's very, very socialist because it's a government city. Naturally, right? Naturally, it's going to attract a certain type of people. And those people are more upholding towards the central line of the greater good. Whereas here you get more people stepping back and stepping into their groups. So you get more individuals, to be honest, who are true to themselves in cities where there's less socialism pushed. And you're going to see that in countries as well. And of course, wherever you see countries that are strongly socialist, you're going to see strong opposition. But within that opposition, depends how it works, right? You're going to see people like me who are like, yeah, I oppose it, but I don't care to go to a protest, right? I might on certain occasions. I might not on others, right? Because I present the way I present through my mental kind of capacity and through the top part of my chart is I'm more individual. And so I'm like, yeah, but that's not for me. You know, I prefer to stay out of it, step in, hold some wisdom, have a look at it from afar and go, yeah, I can see what's good about that. I can see where it fell down. I can see where people stayed in the group for too long and it became an unconscious wah instead of a conscious one. Instead of one like, do I really agree with what's going on here? Is everything here cohesive? Is this something that's going to perpetuate something good? Or is it ultimately going to be used against us? You know, does this really uphold our intention? Or are we just becoming enforcers, trying to force another tribe to do what we want, which is essentially where you get war, right? So absolutely, Arel is right. People don't uphold the individual, particularly when we are lacking in safety and we go into our need to be safe within the tribe, and we will give ourselves up to just become a node within that tribe, just to become the warrior or the empath or the empress, which is the same thing actually, or the leader or the strategist. It's going to big up our egos. It's going to make us feel safe in some way. It's going to make us feel powerful. But it's actually going to remove our individual power if we stay there without stepping back into our meditation and going, how does this sit in me when I'm outside of the wa? How does this feel when I detox all of my centers and my electromagnetics from other people? And so as we go forward into 2027, meditation is the name of the game, not because meditation matters so much, but because it brings forward a meditative quality where you can be the observer even when you're in the tribe, because you know that unconsciously your body is electromagnetically connecting. The new beings, of course, they won't have the same problem because they consciously connect. But us, we will always do that. That is the way our bodies work. That is the way your avatar works. Be aware of your unconsciousness and your unconscious magnetivity. I can't find that word. You know what I mean. Erin Zimwara signing out. Bye.